What is going on, everyone? My name is Jamon McKinney, or you can just call me Juice because that is my nickname. Welcome to the Juice Alert, everyone. If you have not subscribed to the Juice Alert already, be sure to do that right about now. You will not regret it. You can find me on YouTube as well as podcasting platforms. And today I have a very special guest once again for you guys right here. His name is JT, and he has a YouTube channel. He has a podcast in which he talks about sports. And that podcast and that YouTube channel is called JT Sports. So, JT, I brought him on the show today because I came across his channel several months ago. And, we kind of, have come across both each other's channels over the past, couple weeks or so. And we kind of bounced ideas back and forth off of each other, kind of off the air from when we've been making videos, on both our shows. And JT disagreed with the take that I had about the Pittsburgh Steelers. For those of you that, have been watching my content for the last couple of weeks, I've recently said the Pittsburgh Steelers are not a playoff team. And JT, he's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So today, JT is going to come on the show and debate me about the Pittsburgh Steelers and tell all of you why they are a dark horse Super Bowl contender in the 2020 NFL season. We'll talk about the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. We'll preview the Giants and the Steelers Monday Night Football game, a game I'm very excited to watch. We'll talk about some other fun NFL topics, and we'll just talk about football overall and have a good time. So, JT, appreciate you for coming on the show once again. You can find JT on YouTube by the name of JT Sports. That's his YouTube channel. He's also on podcasting platforms. That includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that great stuff. Not going to waste your time too much longer. I'm just going to get right into the show. I present you guys a very good episode with JT Sports. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Juice Alert. I'm joined by JT Sports, as you can see right here on your screen. JT, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to be on here, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So, JT, before we get started, tell people a little about your channel, what you put out there as far as NFL goes, as far as the sports you talk about, and tell people why you started your YouTube channel.
So, on my channel, I upload basically all kinds of sports content. I was trying to upload basketball, but every time I try to, make a basketball recap about the game, I just fall asleep during the game and things like that. But I upload NFL previews, recaps. I do the same thing for college football, break down the rosters and things like that. And I pride my channel on being unbiased. I know I'm a Steelers fan, but I still try to be a realistic fan. One thing that made me start my YouTube channel is I got tired of seeing guys personalities on television and just them it seems like a lot of the things they did was just for clicks. And you can't really consider the guys on television even analysts. They're more of just personalities. When you think about somebody that's on television, you notice them more for their personality than for their analysis and their thoughts and perspectives on teams. So I made my channel because I want to bring non-biased and realistic approaches and, reviews of teams from a non-biased standpoint. And also when it comes to players, I feel too many people, they don't think about being in the other player's shoes. They don't think about what it's like to be a person. So I try to be a human because, I made a lot of mistakes in my past. For Baker Mayfield, a lot of people were criticizing Baker Mayfield last season, saying that he sucked. And I was hey, we all had a moment in our life, when we got complacent, we felt we was that person. We had our chest poked out. And sometimes we need to take losses in life to get humble. So I try to look at things from a player's perspective and how they think about things and try to understand their mistakes and try to be non-biased.
Yeah, no doubt. You do a very good job on your channel. You have, I believe, 8,000 subscribers, if I'm not correct. Yeah. And before we get into this little debate right here, tell people a fun fact about yourself that maybe people don't know about. Because they obviously know you for your sports takes, but what's a fun fact about JT?
Man,
if you don't want to share, you don't have to. But I just wanted to, bring that.
I don't really have one. I'm going to FAU, and my favorite rapper is the NBA YoungBoy. So,
got it. Okay, so let's get right into this debate. So JT, I commented on his channel about them Pittsburgh Steelers. He said, I don't know about the take that I had. And recently, and throughout this offseason, I've been preaching that the Steelers are not a playoff team this season. and JT disagrees with me. And a lot of people actually disagree with me. I realize this is a hot take, so today we're gonna have a little debate and talk about if the Steelers are a playoff team. By the way, guys, be sure to comment if you're watching on YouTube if you think Pittsburgh is a playoff team and why. Okay, so let's get started, man. So Pittsburgh, I got no complaints about that defense. Top 5 defense in my opinion. From last year, they were 5th in points per game allowed. You got TJ Watt, you got Devin Bush, you got Joe Hayden, played good last year. No complaints about the defense. I don't think the Steelers have the best defense in the NFL, but they're right up there. They're definitely a very, very good defense, okay? And I realized that Doug Hodges and Mason Rudolph are not playing quarterback for this team anymore. Big Ben is an upgrade. Not even going to debate you about that. But I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is going to do all that great this year. I really don't. Let's take a look back when Big Ben was last healthy. Okay, I understand that he threw for a lot of yards, threw for a lot of touchdown passes, but the Steelers didn't make the playoffs. They missed the playoffs. He led the league in interceptions. And see, the thing is, Steelers fans can't expect Ben to throw for 5,000 yards, over 30 touchdowns, in my opinion, just because I don't think Antonio Brown, he's not walking through that building anymore. Le'Veon Bell, I know he's kind of flamed out with the Jets, but when Le'Veon Bell was on the Steelers, he was one of the best running backs in the entire NFL. I don't think that James Conner's on a prime Le'Veon Bell's level. So I don't think Ben's going to do all that great this year, not to mention he's 38 years old, coming off a major surgery, and he's only played a full season in his career 4 times in 16 years. Big Ben's always kind of playing around 80 to 70 to 75%. I just don't know what to expect from him coming off a major injury, that being that old. I don't have high expectations for him. And listen, the last time Ben was on the field when we saw him this past year, I know it was a small sample size, but versus the Patriots, he didn't look so good. The Seahawks, it was shaky first half, We saw Big Ben last year, 56% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 66 passer rating. And we look at Big Ben's weapons. I'm not going to say that Ben doesn't have bad weapons. He does have bad weapons. But Juju, he kind of underwhelmed last year. I understand that it was not great quarterback play, but I don't consider Juju to be a top 10 wide receiver. I look at Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron never had a 1,000-yard season. I don't see it. We look at the run game. James Conner. Is James Conner a dynamic running back? I don't think so. 4 yards per carry last year, only 446 yards, and he couldn't stay healthy. And I know that Deontay Johnson's a player that Pittsburgh Steelers fans are excited about. I'm excited about Deontay Johnson, but I don't think Deontay Johnson is among one of the better number 2s in the NFL. James Washington's okay. And yeah, I don't see it with Pittsburgh this year. I think that defensively they'll be very good. They're well coached. So I have them going 8-8 just because Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. He's never had a losing season. He's an elite head coach. Good defense. Ben will at least give you average quarterback play this year. Not above average, not MVP level, but he'll be solid. But I see the Steelers going 8-8. I think Baltimore. I think Kansas City. I think the Patriots. I think the Texans. I think the Bills. I think the Broncos. I think Cleveland. And I think Tennessee are all better than Pittsburgh. So JT, what do you disagree with? And why are the Steelers a playoff team? Because you actually had them as a dark horse Super Bowl contender, if I'm not correct.
Here's my thing. So let's talk about the teams you said was better than Pittsburgh first. Houston is not better than us. Houston's offensive line is amongst the worst in the NFL. They lost their best run defender and DJ Reader. And plus, their defense was 24th versus the run and 29th against the pass. Their defense has been pretty much in the bottom of the barrel in the NFL in terms of statistics for like the last 4 or 5 seasons. The only reason why Houston makes it to playoffs is because of Deshaun Watson. And you wonder why they never make it far, because they don't have a good coach. You see, Houston was basically like, you're in college, we're both in college. So you ever had a math test and you got the right answer on the math test, but the way that you got the right answer was the wrong method of getting at? That method may work for that problem, but once the problem gets more complex and more complicated, that method won't work anymore. So with the Houston Texans, they played in the worst division in the NFL for like over the last 4 seasons. Now you got Tennessee, who's going to be competitive. You got Indianapolis, who's going to be competitive. And me, when I look at a team, I judge a team by how good your head coach is first, because at the end of the day, you only go as far as your head. Because I know a lot of people like to talk about who are the best quarterbacks in the NFL and things like that. But here's what people got to understand. When you talk about the best quarterbacks in the NFL, you got to talk about who their head coaches is. Who's the head coach for Patrick Mahomes? Andy Reid. Russell Wilson has Pete Carroll. Drew Brees has Sean Payton. Tom Brady had Bill Belichick. Carson Wentz has Doug Peterson. So when you talk about the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, they most of the time have elite head coach, aside from some outliers, which is Deshaun Watson. But he's been carrying Houston in a pretty weak division. Now the division is good now. So when you look at Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh has no holes on the roster. We only have question marks. Like, can you name me one legitimate weakness? Like, it's just absolutely terrible that Pittsburgh needs to address.
Well, I'll say this about Pittsburgh. I don't think they have very many weaknesses, but I don't think Pittsburgh is all that dynamic. When I look at even a team like Denver, I think Denver, man, I look at the weapons that Drew Lock has. That's some dynamic weapons. Tennessee, they got a dynamic weapon in A.J. Brown. Baltimore, Kansas City. I don't think Pittsburgh is dynamic enough. What do you say to that? And you can continue your points.
But here's the thing. When we talk about playmakers, you got to look at the first thing that matters is the offensive line. So you alluded to Le'Veon Bell not playing. So is it crazy how when Le'Veon Bell was injured in 2015, D'Angelo Williams led the NFL or was top 5 in the NFL in touchdowns? He had 11 touchdowns, 907 rushing yards in 2015 when Le'Veon Bell ended up suffering an ACL injury, was out for the season. You see, what I was trying to tell Steelers fans before Le'Veon Bell left was that Le'Veon Bell is a product of the Pittsburgh Steelers off the line, because you got to look at how good was the running back play when Le'Veon Bell was injured. And D'Angelo Williams rushed for 907 yards when Le'Veon Bell wasn't there. D'Angelo Williams had a lot of success when Le'Veon Bell wasn't there. Then you saw Le'Veon Bell leave, go to New York, doesn't even come close to rushing for 1,000 yards, because there's a difference between playing for that Steelers off the line and playing for that New York Jets off the line. Also, 2018, James Conner was a Pro Bowler. He went to the Pro Bowl, and if he never would have missed those 4 games that he missed that season, he would have ended up eclipsing or coming close to Le'Veon Bell's 2017 or like 2015 All-Pro season, I believe. I can't remember the exact number, but it's all about the offensive line play. And when you look at the Steelers offensive line, that's where it starts. You see, you alluded to the teams that make it to the playoffs all have top 10 offenses. But when you look at those teams, they all have good offensive lines besides Seattle. But other than Seattle and Houston, the teams that make it the furthest in the playoffs are the teams that have the great offensive lines. Now, at the end of the day, we can make this all about skill players, the running backs, the wide receivers. At the end of the day, football is the game that is won and lost in the trenches. If you don't win up front and you don't dominate at the line of scrimmage, you're going to lose. Look at San Francisco, for example. Kansas City, in the first half of that game, didn't really have an answer. The 49ers were getting pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes played a really bad first half, probably the worst we've seen Patrick Mahomes play. And then in the fourth quarter, what happens? Kansas City's offensive line takes over. 49ers pass rush gets kind of neutralized because they get gas because the offense can't do anything. So the offensive line play for Pittsburgh is still elite. You're looking at an offensive line that allowed less than 30 sacks last year, and we probably would have allowed like only 20 if we didn't have Mason Rudolph and Devin Hodges who hold on to the ball all day long. Then you look at Pittsburgh not being able to run the football. I mean, teams were literally putting like 10 guys in a box. They were just completely going all out trying to stop the run. So, I mean, you can't possibly have a legitimate run game if you don't have somewhat of a threat at quarterback, because at the end of the day, you still have to have a more than capable quarterback. Devin Hodges, I mean, he played great when we compare him to what you expect the undrafted rookie free agent to play. I mean, this guy was a rookie. He was undrafted out of Stanford. Like, not a lot of coaches can even win 8 games with a backup quarterback, let alone a 4th stringer who started the season out on the practice squad. So then you look at the wide receiver position. Listen, I'm not worried about the wide receiver. Pittsburgh is probably the best team in the NFL when it comes to developing wide receivers. I don't like to, talk about the past, but we do got to give a history lesson about the wide receivers that had came and gone out of Pittsburgh. Hines Ward, Hall of Famer. Antoine Randall was a really good player. Santonio Holmes, remember him, Super Bowl MVP from Super Bowl 43 against Arizona. What happened once he left Pittsburgh? Went to New York, didn't do anything. After Santonio Holmes left, Mike Wallace stepped up. Mike Wallace last year in Pittsburgh, he was a Pro Bowler playing for Big Ben. Once he left, he had some okay seasons with the Dolphins, but he didn't really do nothing after that. Then you had Antonio Brown comes. Antonio Brown comes, and Antonio Brown was great, but you can also make the argument that Antonio Brown was nothing without Ben Roethlisberger, because did you remember the games that the Steelers played without Big Ben when they had Landry Jones in that quarterback? Landry Jones may be the worst backup quarterback I've ever seen in my life. How you have Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and Martavis Bryant, and you still can't do anything with them? So Antonio Brown was also at elite level when Big Ben was there. And when you look at teams that have elite wide receivers like the Detroit Lions when they had Calvin Johnson, the New York Giants when they had Odell Beckham. Those teams were better when those players left because, well, maybe not the Giants, but those offenses were a little bit better because when you have an elite wide receiver, you try to force feed him the ball to keep him happy. And when you have Ben Roethlisberger in 2018, you alluded to his 16 interceptions, which led the lead that year. 10 out of 16 of those interceptions were all thrown to Antonio Brown. So if he wasn't force feeding the ball to Antonio Brown, he would have only thrown 6 interceptions. Also, you can tell that he was trying to force feed the ball.
Ben has a tendency to force feed wide receivers, period. So you think he's going to spread the ball around to his playmakers. You don't think he's going to force feed Juju?
I mean, he is, but like when you have a guy like Antonio Brown, you would throw it up to him. But in certain situations, when Antonio Brown's pitching his fits, Big Ben was trying to force him the ball to keep him happy. And that's the thing. When you have a guy in the locker room like that, same thing with Odell Beckham. That's why I don't believe Cleveland is going to be all that better than Pittsburgh this year because you got Odell Beckham, you got Jarvis Landry, you got 2 wide receivers who are ball hungry. We saw in that Kevin Stefanski system last year in Minnesota, Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs were both unhappy with their amount of targets at some point in the season. You're not going to be able to satisfy both of those guys. You can't satisfy a guy who constantly wants the ball in his hands. So you go back in 2018, think about the games Pittsburgh lost. We lost to the Oakland Raiders when Big Ben had to sit out the 2 halves or 2 quarters when Joshua Dobbs had to come in. Then he came back in the 4th quarter. Steelers lost that game because he threw an interception to Antonio Brown in the red zone trying to force feed him the ball. Previously, he did the same thing versus Denver, trying to force feed Antonio Brown the ball in the red zone. So I think Big Ben got a little bit too concerned and got a little bit too complacent with trying to keep Antonio Brown happy. That's why it's important to get guys like that out of the locker room. That's what makes Pittsburgh one of the best organizations in the NFL. Pittsburgh, Green Bay, New England, they have the philosophy that everybody is replaceable. They're not going to let one player dictate their franchise because you saw what happened when Aaron Rodgers was dictating the Green Bay Packers when he basically had all the control. Green Bay eventually, like the same thing that's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. You give him all the power. You say, hey, go win me the game. But then eventually that all crashes and burns like he did it in Mike McCarthy's last season. So you look at Pittsburgh, you have, our wide receivers. I would like to think we have one of the best young wide receiving corps in the NFL, but you see a lot of people, and you may not see that because how are these wide receivers supposed to flourish when Mason Rudolph is inaccurate? I mean, has a big arm. He can throw it. He can throw the whole entire football field, but can't hit anybody. Then you have Duck Hodges, who can only throw 30 yards. So, I mean, the wide receiver play got held back by the poor performance by the quarterbacks. Same thing with the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears, I think they have a really solid group of wide receivers, but they got held back by Mitch Trubisky. So, I mean, I think that the Steelers have a lot of good playmakers. Like, the Steelers are really good at developing wide receivers. Juju is in a contract year. Juju not only is looking to bounce back, but he's looking to get big-time money. And if he balls out this year, he could end up getting paid like Amari Cooper. That's where the rumors are circulating. So, I mean, Pittsburgh, you're high on the Patriots. My question for you is, how can you be high on the Patriots when the Patriots have lost 6 of their best players on both sides of the football? They lost one of their best offensive linemen. On top of that, they have a quarterback who has just as many injury concerns as Ben Roethlisberger. Cam Newton is coming off of a shoulder injury. He's been banged up like the last 2-3 seasons. He's 30 years old. And we've seen mobile quarterbacks that get up to that level of age that start to have their bodies break down. They don't really have that many years left of playing. So, I mean, when we think about Cam Newton, you got to have the same, flaws and, question marks about Cam Newton with Big Ben because he's injury prone also. And also, the Steelers don't have anybody dynamic. Who do the New England Patriots have that's dynamic other than, Julian Edelman, who's been there for about 20 freaking years? I mean, N'Keal Harry, what did he do last season? He got outplayed by Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson, a lot of people don't know this, was injured last season. And he was the best player on the Steelers offense. So a lot of people think the Steelers aren't better than the Patriots, but we're just giving the Patriots the benefit of a doubt because of how great their coaching staff is. You got to
Yep, and I'm definitely doing that. I'm definitely doing that.
That's why I'm high on the Patriots also. But we also got to look at the fact that the Patriots don't have a lot of talent on offense neither. But you got to give the Steelers the benefit of the doubt also because of Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin was the best coach in the NFL last year. It really shouldn't be a debate. It's not one coach in the NFL last season, not even one coach in NFL history that could win 8 games with an undrafted rookie free agent. It never has been done before. Like, it's not a lot of coaches that can even win 8 games with their starting quarterback fully healthy for the entire season.
No, Mike Tomlin's an elite coach. I got no questions about Mike Tomlin. That's why I gave y'all the 8-8 record, because I said I'm going to respect Mike Tomlin.
Here's the thing. When you have an elite head coach being 8-8 isn't good enough. When you have a lead coach, most of the time they should always be considered a playoff contender based on how good of a coach they are. Now, though Mike Tomlin has had some criticism, I've been heavily critical of Mike Tomlin over the years. But last year he proved me wrong, because my thing about Mike Tomlin is that Pittsburgh, when it comes to the big moments against New England, he can't get it done. And when you look at what he did last year, he blew me away. Because I was really under the impression that Pittsburgh should move on from Mike Tomlin. Nothing against Mike Tomlin not being a good coach prior to the start of the season. It's just that sometimes coaches run their, course throughout teams. He's been for Pittsburgh.
Sometimes you just need a change. Sometimes you just need a change.
And Andy Reid, he's a great coach, but he had a long drought before he made it back to the playoffs. So, I mean, you look at Mike Tomlin, I think it's kind of disrespectful to say, just because of how good of a coach Mike Tomlin is, 8-8. Like, I think you have to say at least 10-6. Like, that's my expectations. Now, I'm not coming out here saying that the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying we're going to win the division. I understand that it's Baltimore's time right now. Like, I'm not naive to understand when it's a team's time to step up. It's Baltimore's time. They have the best roster. They have a great coaching staff. All I'm saying is that can the Steelers just get a tad bit of respect? Like, I know we have the Steelers have a complete roster. Like, let's go position by position. Quarterback, we already know Big Ben isn't a question mark there. Off the line, still top 10.
He's a question mark to me, but go ahead.
It's not a noticeable weakness like a team of Cleveland. They have a big gaping hole like linebacker. They just lost their starting linebacker, Michael Wilson, who was their best linebacker. We don't know when he's going to return. They lost Grant Delpit, so they have concerns at safety and they have concerns at linebacker. The Steelers don't have really any concerns. We only have, how good is Big Ben going to perform, but we just need Big Ben to be average, because you don't need to have a great quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Like, look at Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning won his second Super Bowl at his worst in 2015. So, I mean, the Steelers can at least be 10-6. Now, I know a lot of people are high on the Browns, but I was high on the Browns last year, but coaching actually matters. And when you look at the preparation time that Cleveland has to work with this season, it's easy to say Cleveland's going to be better from a talent standpoint, but you got to stop looking at talent. We got to start looking at these teams based on, the situation. And the realistic possibility is that Cleveland may start out the season really slow. They could start out 1-4, because you got to look, new head coach, new coaching staff. They're trying to implement a new system and a new playbook. We've only had 3-4 weeks of time to actually get on the field. And I understand what it's like to have a new head coach, because in high school, we had a coaching change. But when you have a short amount of time to prep, there's a difference between, you can watch all the film you want to, the playbook. But once you get on the field, it's a difference, because you got to be able to execute those plays. And the Cleveland Browns, NFL playbooks probably have like over 200, 300 plays. And how many can the Browns literally be able to master by the time week 1 of the NFL season starts? So, I mean, new offense, new offensive coordinator, new coaching staff, it's going to take them a while. And Pittsburgh, last year, we started out kind of slow. We always kind of start out a little bit slow on offense, because Pittsburgh is an offense all about chemistry. Like you alluded to earlier, Big Ben is a guy who really trusts his wide receivers. Like, if Big Ben doesn't trust you, he's not going to throw you the football. He had a lot of faith in Antonio Brown. Like, Big Ben is willing to, risk turn the football over if it risks, having his wide receivers make a big play. Big Ben is a guy who has great chemistry with his wide receivers. Like, if Big Ben doesn't trust you and you drop like 3-4 passes, you're out. Like, look at James Washington's rookie season. James Washington didn't develop until Big Ben left, because Big Ben didn't trust him. He couldn't throw the football up to him, and James Washington was dropping passes, couldn't get it done. And you look at that game versus New England, it was a lot of drop passes. The Steelers' offense was really rusty. So, I mean, the Steelers is the offense that, it looks good, but it's all about chemistry. It's all about camaraderie. And I think when you look at the Steelers this year, Mike Tomlin is going to get the Steelers back to the playoffs. Like, I'm not saying the Steelers are going to make it to the playoffs because of, how great of a team they are. I'm saying the Steelers are going to at least be 10-6 because of how great of a coach Mike Tomlin is, and because of how great of a team we have. And we don't really have any significant weaknesses. We only have, like little itty-bitty concerns like Big Ben and all, how he's going to perform, but he can't do no worse than Devin Hodges. Like, our best offensive player before I stop talking was Chris Boswell. He was our kicker. That's the only weapon we had. Like, I swear, we got to the red zone. you had to pray that the Steelers were able to score once we got to the red zone. Even then, most of the time, the only reason we got to the red zone was because our defense created a turnover. So imagine how good we can be this year now that we actually have Big Ben, who can actually be better than what we had last season. So, I mean, I'm not coming out here being unrealistic. I think I'm being pretty fair when I say the Steelers can go at least 10-6 this year. And I know a lot of people, you're not the only one who's being heavily critical. I've had to watch Colin, at least I get to come out here and defend the Steelers. Meanwhile, you got Colin Coward out here giving out bad takes and things like that, talking about the Steelers off the line is old and things like that. At least with you have fair and you have reasonable points. I have some thoughts about Big Ben. How good is he going to be at 30 years old? But at the end of the day, he is a future Hall of Famer for a reason. The reason why he's a future Hall of Famer is because he's resilient. I know a lot of people like to say Big Ben is only as good as the time he has around him, but you got to look at what has happened with the players that have left. Everybody that's left Pittsburgh hasn't done anything. Big Ben is a Hall of Famer for a reason. I think it's disrespectful to talk down on somebody and say that they would carry by time. It's a lot of great players who have a lot of good players around them that may not be Hall of Famers. Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins. At the end of the day, being a Hall of Famer is more than, how you produce on the field. It's about your mindset. And Big Ben, nobody can knock this. He's one of the more resilient players in the NFL. And I don't think he's going to end up having this season be a complete disaster when he's just not serviceable at all. So I think pretty reasonable is 10-6.
Got it. Well, we shall see if Pittsburgh makes the playoffs. JT says yes. Me, Jamal McKinney, a.k.a. Juice, I say no. But I digress, and we shall see what happens. All right, so me and JT obviously disagree about the Steelers making the playoffs. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. He thinks they are. But we both agree that Washington is the most underrated team in all football. Now, a lot of Washington fans support my channel. I appreciate you Washington fans that do like my videos, that comment, all that good stuff. And I've been kind to Washington this offseason. I like some of the moves they've made. And I said recently they're the most underrated team in all of football. I really like their defense. I think their defense is going to be a top 10 unit this year. I like the fact that they improved their secondary, even though it is still a question, but I still think the secondary will be improved. Linebackers are solid. That defensive line, led by Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Payne, Allen, Matthew Ioannidis, it's very scary. So I think they're going to be a top 10 defense this year. And top 10 defenses last year, as far as points per game allowed, all 10 of the top 10 defenses as far as points per game allowed last year, those teams won at least 7 games. So I'm going to say Washington wins about 7 games this year. I believe in Dwayne Haskins. I think the offense is going to be improved. Not a great offense, but it'll be improved. I'm not going to elaborate too much on this just because I've made so many different videos defending this Washington football team. But JT recently, when he was talking about the Washington football team in the offseason, he said that they were going to go about 7-9, maybe 8-8. So, JT, we kind of talked about this, off the air. We think Washington is probably the most underrated team in all football. Tell everyone why they should believe in the Washington football team this year and why they should believe in Dwayne Haskins, because you believe in Dwayne Haskins as well, just like me.
So, I think Washington is underrated, but I do think that the Chargers are a little bit more underrated.
Okay.
But Washington, they have a great defensive line. And here's the thing when it comes to, underrated teams like this. We call them underrated, but why are they underrated? It is a reason. And the reason why we think that they are underrated is because it's a question mark that they have there. And the question mark that they have is the offensive line. Now, that offensive line, it scares me. Because last year wasn't great. And this year, I still don't think it's all that improved. And when you look at that division, Washington can't compete. But they're going to be facing the Eagles, who have a lot of depth on that defensive line. You got Dallas, who, although they lost Gerald McCoy, they still have a really good defensive line as well. They just added Everson Griffin. You already got to worry about DeMarcus Lawrence there. So, I think Washington is underrated in the fact that they're a team that nobody is actually giving them a shot to at least compete for a playoff spot. Everybody thinks they're going to go 3-13, 4-12, 6-10, or something like that. I actually think Washington is a team that can compete for a playoff spot. They may not get in, but I think they could be in the playoff race to the very end. And you look at that division hasn't had a back-to-back division winner in a very long time. And when you look at Ron Rivera, with everything that has went on in that Washington organization this past offseason, Ron Rivera is the perfect coach for that. Ron Rivera is the coach that that you bring in to change your culture. When you're trying to set your franchise up and you're trying to, have a good locker room, that's what Ron Rivera is able to do. Now, in terms of Dwayne Haskins had a really rough rookie season. He had a really unfortunate rookie season as well because Dwayne Haskins had a lot of high expectations because, everybody expected him to go to New York. They chose Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones outplayed him. He got outplayed by Kyler Murray. He got outplayed by Gardner Minshew as well. And it really, it is his fault, but it also isn't his fault. Like 6%, like 80% of it was his fault. They basically fired their coach in the middle of the season. You basically had like an interim head coach there.
Playing for a coach that didn't want him. A coach that didn't want to draft him.
Exactly. So, it was just so much dysfunction that he had to overcome as well. The off the line wasn't great. They couldn't run the football neither. So, Dwayne Haskins, the way he closed out his rookie season was really impressive. Like, he had a couple of nice 2 games. So, I think this season, although he is learning a new system, once again, we only have had like 3-4 weeks. I think that's going to have something to fare. But the good thing about that is that, unlike the Browns, the Washington football team, I almost slipped up there.
It's okay if you do. It's okay if you do.
Yeah. Although their offense may struggle, their defense is good enough, unlike the Browns, to keep them in games because of how good their defensive line is. I actually think that the Washington football team has the second best defensive line in all of the NFL. I'm just being honest. Like, other than the 49ers, everybody is absolute, like, it's so many stars on that defensive line. Like, you already talked about the Alabama Twin Towers that they have down there with Payne and Allen. You got Chase Young, Montez Sweat. So, it's a lot of talent there, man. So, I most definitely could see them going 7-9 or better. I just got to see how good our offensive line is going to do because I don't really care about the wide receiver position. I don't really care about the skill position all that much because, like, if Cam Newton can make it to the Super Bowl in 2015 with Ted Ginn being his number one, I'm pretty sure Dwayne Haskins can be perfectly fine with Terry McLaurin as his true number one. So, my biggest concern is how good is that offensive line going to be. So, I think 7-9, I would like them to go 8-8 too. But I think in terms of me considering them underrated, I think they're underrated in terms of teams that could compete for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and I had them as the most underrated team as well, just because people think that they're going to be the worst team in the NFL. Maybe I recently saw Las Vegas for Las Vegas Super Bowl odds. They had Washington as the second worst odds to win the Super Bowl. What that tells me is that Vegas is saying Washington is the second worst team in the NFL. Not true. I think the Jaguars might be the worst team. I expect Washington to be competitive this year. Ron Rivera, new coach, Jack Del Rio, solid defensive coordinator. Really, last year, a big reason why Washington underperformed was because of coaching. They had Payne and all those good defensive linemen, but because lack of good coaching, you didn't get the most out of those players. And now you improve the secondary. Now you add generational talent in Chase Young. I think that defense is going to be very good. I think that Dwayne Haskins has underrated weapons. Terry McLaurin, I think he has special wide receiver written all over him, so he's good. But, you look at a guy like Steven Sims. Steven Sims played really well at the end of the year. Antonio Gandy Golden out of Liberty, I like him a lot. I really do. And obviously they drafted Antonio Gibson, who can play some wide receiver a little bit. He's more of your pass-catching running back. He also can run the football pretty well between the tackles. They got some other good running backs as well. So really outside the offensive line, they're decent in most areas. If Dwayne Haskins really pops this year, look out. Washington could be a team to look out for this year.
I think a big reason why Ron Rivera chose the Washington job because a lot of people are like, why would he choose Washington? Washington has everything that he needs to be successful. Like, now, can he be successful right away? Maybe not, but he does have a good chance there because it took him years to build that Carolina Panthers defense to the way that he wanted it when they were really good up front. Like, you remember the dominant days when they had I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but they had a really good front seven. Yeah. And you look at Washington, they already have that. Like, the defense doesn't really need to be built. It's simply the offense. So, Ron Rivera, with the team that he has right now, he could win right away.
Yeah, I do think Washington has a ceiling just because their offensive line is so bad, and Dwayne Haskins will be learning a new system. And let's be real, he only started 13 games in college, only had about 7 starts last year, so he's still raw. He's going to make some mistakes, but I expect Dwayne Haskins to play a lot better this year. I think that he'll continue the momentum they had towards the end of the year, in which he threw 5 touchdown passes to 1 interception in the last 3 games of the season. And yeah, I think Dwayne Haskins will be a very good quarterback once he reaches full potential. But enough talking about Washington. Let's transition to who are the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm going to get started, and then I'll let JT have the floor. So, top 5 quarterbacks entering the 2020 NFL season. Number 1 quarterback, in my opinion, has got to be Patrick Mahomes. The guy threw 50 touchdown passes in his first season as a starter. He just won the Super Bowl MVP versus the best defense in the entire NFL. And when we look at great players, I always say, can you elevate in the biggest moments? We saw Patrick Mahomes do that last year, and even the year prior, beating Andrew Luck in a playoff game and nearly beating Tom Brady in that Patriots team if it were not for, overtime, him not getting the football and a couple things that didn't go his way. I mean, in the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes is 4-1 as a starter so far, 13 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and a 106 passer rating. That's pretty good. And not to mention, Patrick Mahomes is the best pure thrower of the football in the NFL. He's got the best arm in the NFL. There's really no true flaws to his game outside of him not being great at the line of scrimmage to a level of maybe an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady or a Drew Brees just because he hasn't seen everything yet. But I think Patrick Mahomes is the best player in football, no doubt about it. Best quarterback in football, too, as well. So Russell Wilson, for me, comes up next. I think Russell Wilson comes in number 2. Ever since 2017, Russell Wilson has led the NFL in touchdown passes. And that's with not the greatest offensive lines. I don't think his defense has been all that great post-Legion of Boom. And Russell Wilson has never had a losing season, man. He's one of the more clutcher quarterbacks in the NFL. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's one of the 3 best running quarterbacks in the NFL as far as his ability to create, off schedule, and run the football at the quarterback position. And he throws a very good deep ball. I don't think he gets enough credit for how physically talented of a thrower he is. So Russell Wilson for me is number 2. Number 3, I'm going to go Aaron Rodgers, actually. I think Aaron Rodgers, you disagree. You can come at me a little bit, but let me make my case, okay? Now, Aaron Rodgers no longer is the best quarterback in the NFL like he was roughly from 2011 to probably early 2017. You could make the argument that he was top 2 at his position, when he was winning multiple MVPs. But Aaron Rodgers, outside Patrick Mahomes, to me, still has the second best arm in the NFL, behind Patrick Mahomes. And let me be very clear. When I talk about arm talent, it's not arm strength, Buffalo Bills fans, okay? When I talk about arm talent, I'm talking about can you throw the ball with accuracy, with touch, anticipation, all that. Aaron Rodgers, outside Patrick Mahomes right now, he's got the second best arm in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers, he still can move around the pocket very well, good pocket presence, good pocket awareness, he doesn't make mistakes. If you're going to beat Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have to beat him because he won't beat himself. The last 2 seasons, he's the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for 4,000 yards and fewer than 5 interceptions for back-to-back seasons, okay? He's one of the 3 smartest quarterbacks in the NFL, and people can talk about his completion percentage, his pass rating dipping the last couple of years. Listen, the Packers ask Aaron Rodgers to make tough throws. They ask him to throw into tight windows. And outside Devontae Adams, I don't think he's had much at wide receiver outside of Adams, and I think that he's still a top 3 quarterback, He went 4-0 without Devontae Adams last year. He elevates the players around him. And, yeah, and let's be real. If you're throwing into tight windows, you're in a not stat-friendly offense, your numbers are not going to be as good as a Drew Brees or even a Jameis Winston last year, who had a lot of great weapons. So, Aaron Rodgers is number 3. Number 4, Deshaun Watson for me. I think Deshaun Watson is right up there. His rookie season, he was on pace for 43 touchdown passes before he got hurt. In 2018, he goes 11-5 with not a great offensive line, with not a great running game, threw over 4,000 yards, had a pass rating over 100, and he got them to the playoffs. And I don't think Bill Bryant's all that great of a head coach. In 2019, this past year, did you see what he did versus the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs? I think if you want to look at what an elite quarterback is, watch that game. Because in that game, Deshaun Watson didn't have Will Fuller, didn't have a running game. The run game was non-existent. The offensive line couldn't block. Bill O'Brien tried to lose that game, but it did not matter because Deshaun Watson elevated that team to victory. So Deshaun Watson, for me, comes in at number 4. I don't think he gets enough credit for how physically gifted he is as a thrower and as an athlete. And then last but not least, I'll go Lamar Jackson. And I'm going to put some respect on Lamar Jackson just because he won the NFL MVP this past year. I usually put respect in your name a little bit more if you won an MVP. And Lamar Jackson is 0-2 in the playoffs, so I can't put him top 3 at his position until he wins a playoff game. And he's got to prove that he can win in the playoffs. He's got to do that. But so far, I think he's top 5, barely, okay? And we could talk about in the playoffs and things maybe being his fault. He definitely deserves some blame. But last year, he had 500 total yards versus the Tennessee Titans. That game was not all on Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is the best athlete at his position. He led the NFL in touchdown passes last year. And outside of Mark Andrews and Marquise Hollywood Brown, the Ravens have good weapons, but not great weapons. Not Patrick Mahomes' weapons. Not Jameis Winston's weapons from last year. And Lamar Jackson, when your play is dead, he can make it right when you're wrong, and he had more rushing yards as a quarterback than anyone in NFL history last year. He had more rushing yards than Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, and Aaron Jones. He's very accurate. He's a solid decision maker. He's got a fairly strong arm. So that's my top 5 quarterbacks. Mahomes, number 1. Russell Wilson, number 2. Aaron Rodgers, number 3. Deshaun Watson, number 4. And Lamar Jackson, number 5. Who's your top 5?
So we pretty much have the same top 5 besides one person. You probably already know who it is. But so Mahomes is number 1. No debate there. Best quarterback in the NFL, best arm, great athlete. Now, not the Lamar Jackson kind of athlete, but he's pretty athletic in his own right in terms of, being able to run out the pocket, making throws all platforms. Then you got Russell Wilson. I believe that Russell Wilson is a better arm talent than Aaron Rodgers as of right now. Like, it's this throw that he made to Tyler Lockett. Like, I don't know if you've seen it.
It was versus the Rams in the back of the end zone. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, exactly.
But did you see that throw Aaron Rodgers made versus the Chiefs? That was pretty nasty.
Man, that was Russell Wilson, yeah, and he has a pretty good deep ball as well. He also made DK Metcalf what he was. Like, DK Metcalf, like, a big reason why DK Metcalf fit for Seattle was because Russell Wilson, how good he was throwing the football. Like, I don't think DK Metcalf would have been a great fit. And, well, it's pretty much only 2 teams I felt DK Metcalf felt well was. That was Seattle and Pittsburgh, because both of those teams like to push the ball deep, and you got 2 quarterbacks to throw pretty accurate deep balls in Big Ben and Russell Wilson. So I felt he was pretty good going to either Pittsburgh or Seattle. So,
yeah, Russell elevates the players around him. DK is a good talent, but he wasn't quite as polished coming out of college, and Russell Wilson made him look good. So yeah.
Then at number 3, I have Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson is the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL because, like you said, what he's been able to do, taking his team to playoffs year in and year out. Despite the fact that Bill O'Brien hasn't been a great coach, like Bill O'Brien has pretty much became Mark McCarthy / Chip Kelly 2.0. Like, Mark McCarthy at one point was a really good coach, but he kind of took a back seat, got too overly reliant on Aaron Rodgers. And that's kind of what I'm seeing out of Bill O'Brien. Like, I think he's getting too overly reliant on Deshaun Watson and bail him out too many times. So I have Deshaun Watson at number 3. At number 4, I have Carson Wentz. The reason why I put Carson Wentz at number 4, I know a lot of people are going to talk about, the JT, Johnson Wentz. So I was like, man, look, Carson Wentz, when I look at an elite quarterback is somebody who is able to do more with less. Some people, like Dallas Cowboy fans, try to say Dak Prescott is better because of stats. This is why I don't try to do my arguments based on stats all that much. And if I do implement stats, it's not all that much because stats.
Hey, really quickly, same here. I look for traits and eye tests. Like, what are your traits? I mean, exactly. Because you can look at a player in a certain offense. There, like I mentioned with Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees is in a more stat-friendly offense than Aaron Rodgers. There's easy completions for the guy. He's throwing to wide receivers, a lot of screen passes, So I agree with you, but go ahead.
And then when you look at Carson Wentz, like, Carson Wentz had a Wentz plus with a banged-up offensive line. The wide receiving core was absolutely terrible. Like, his best wide receiver was a guy named Greg Ward Jr., who played for the AAF. And I don't even know if Greg Ward Jr. even made the roster. Like, I have to check that out once I get done. So then you have Zach Ertz, who a lot of people say, oh, he has Zach Ertz and things like that. It's like, man, that ain't nothing compared to what Dak Prescott has. So Amari Cooper, Randall Cobb, he had Jason Witten, who was also pretty dominant in the red zone. So, I mean, Michael Gallup. You also had Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield who rushed for 1,200 yards and still missed the playoffs. So which one would you prefer? Would you prefer the quarterback who does more with less or the quarterback who does less with more? So I have Carson Wentz at number 4. And I know, like, here's my thing with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has regressed. And here's what a lot of people got to understand with Aaron Rodgers. And this is on film, too. Aaron Rodgers plays for the big play. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, he ad-libs a lot. He does ad-lib more than I would actually like. Okay?
And I feel like he didn't play to Matt LaFleur's system. And I feel like that's a big reason why they got Jordan Love. And I think Green Bay realizes that as Aaron Rodgers gets older, all the stuff that he's able to get away with, he won't be able to get away with no longer because now that he's getting older, his arm and everything else is going to start to deteriorate. And we saw that last year against the 49ers, for example. It was a lot of short passes that he probably could have took to move to kind of, keep the drive going and things like that. But he tried to go for the big play. And going for the big play, I got nothing wrong with that because when you got the talent to, play like that, you got to maximize that. But as the older you get, the more your body starts to break down. So I think Jordan Love was brought in to motivate Aaron Rodgers to be like, hey, man, look, you're not playing within offense, And I know it was his first year under Matt LaFleur, but that offense is like a run heavy offense, and it's kind of like a West Coast built offense, They want to run the football, get play action going, but with Aaron Rodgers, instead of taking the short pass, he'll try to extend the play and try to get it all, or he'll say, here's how I would summarize Aaron Rodgers. He's a guy who would trade away 10 to 8 short passes or short plays for 4 to 5 big plays a game. And that's nothing wrong with that. But as the older you get, his arm is going to break down. His arm's going to deteriorate. He's not going to be as fast as he used to be. So eventually he's going to have to play within the offense. So I think that Aaron Rodgers is not – I don't think he's an elite quarterback. But a lot of people get this messed up. Just because I don't feel like a guy is elite doesn't mean I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. I still think Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback. But
so is he at number 5 for you, or you got someone else?
I have somebody else.
Okay, who's your 5th guy?
So my 5th guy – can I do a tie?
You can do a tie, or you could tell me who you're battling with. Who are the guys you're battling with? Lamar Jackson and Matthew Stafford. Stafford. Ooh, I think Stafford's the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. Now, I think that Stafford might be in the top 10, but I can't put Matthew Stafford around the 6 to 7 or even top 5 range just because let me put it to you this way. Being in that top 5 or around that tier, the elite tier, is sort of a privilege because while Stafford has not had great teams around him, while he's not had great defenses, I will admit that, there are certain other players that have elevated teams. And we recognize that Matthew Stafford, he's been failed by his organization. But that's an indictment on Matthew Stafford to a certain degree just because we've seen guys like Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. We've seen those guys elevate not as great of rosters around them. And that's not an indictment on Matthew Stafford because you need good players around you. There's only about 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks that can elevate just bad rosters. So I think that Stafford's good, but not quite that on that level. So, I don't know. Stafford was on pace for I think almost 5,000 yards last year. He was finna be ridiculous. He was about to have over 40 touchdowns. He was on pace to having the MVP caliber season. And with Matthew Stafford, me personally, I know you may disagree. There's a lot of Packers fans disagree with me, but I feel like Matthew Stafford was better than Aaron Rodgers last season. And that's not based on stats. If it was based on stats, Matthew Stafford would have blew Aaron Rodgers out of the water. But I'm not talking about in terms of overall, but it just in terms of last season, because this is where my ranks is based on last season. Last season, I feel like Matthew Stafford played better than Aaron Rodgers. We saw what happened once he went down. Detroit was absolutely terrible. The wide receivers, Kenny Galladay didn't get used at all, which is a big reason why he didn't make the top 100. So I got Lamar Jackson in there as well. A lot of people may be like, oh, JT, he's only 2 in the playoffs, things like that. It doesn't really matter to me because, at the end of the day, he's young. He's still going to be able to win a playoff game eventually. My thing is with Lamar Jackson's, how much he has improved with Greg Roman, which I expected it. I made a video last year about Greg Roman, how Lamar Jackson be a Pro Bowl under him, because he made Colin Kaepernick a polarizing figure when the 49ers were in their prime, and Tyrod Taylor's a Pro Bowl under him as well. So I think Lamar Jackson's at number 5. My honorable mention would probably be Matthew Stafford, because like I said, I think that Matthew Stafford, at least on film, played better than Aaron Rodgers. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. His arms, he was fitting balls. He was making all kinds of he literally made. Go watch the Chiefs versus Lions game last year. He was putting on a clinic. And it wasn't even his fault they lost that game. Matt Patricia, the defense couldn't get it done. So I think that is fair to say. And a lot of Packers fans, they. And I'm a Packers fan, by the way, so you better watch your mouth. All right. When I say that, you guys don't disagree. You guys disagree, but you guys can respect the opinion. You get what I'm saying? Matthew Stafford has gotten Detroit to the playoffs twice, but I don't think he can pull Deshaun Watson because this division, like I said, he has to face Aaron Rodgers, and he also has to face Minnesota and Chicago, who has always been, kind of a little competitive. They're competitive teams. Yeah, so his division is a little bit tougher than the AFC South, but I believe that Matthew Stafford probably my honorable mention. Got it. And really quickly, before I transition to the next topic, the reason why I'm kind of, having Aaron Rodgers at the 3rd slot is just because it's kind of by default, in my opinion. We look at Tom Brady and Drew Brees. Last couple of years, if you just watch them play, Aaron Rodgers is just more talented flat out. And, they've fallen off a little bit. Drew Brees needs a good offensive line. Now, I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers, is turning water into wine like he did a couple of years ago, but I think that Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career can do more with less than Brady and Breeze. And he's kind of always been able to do that. You know, Drew Brees, for a couple years when he was back with the Saints, he was putting up all those yards and stuff, but they still missed the playoffs. Meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers with the 31st ranked defense goes all the way to the NFC Championship game. But yeah, I mean, Brady and Breeze, they kind of fallen off. And Aaron, last year, he made it to the NFC title game. And Watson, I think Watson's right there. I still think that Aaron's better at the line of scrimmage. You know, he's a more smarter quarterback. You know, he can see everything in the line of scrimmage better than Watson. And, you know, Watson, he's good, but he's got one playoff win, so don't want to quite put him over him yet. And Lamar Jackson, had Lamar have won a playoff game last year, I'd probably make him third or fourth. But until Lamar shows me that he can be around the same level of play or elevate under pressure, I can't put him in my top three. Or over a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who, despite declining a little bit, still finds a way to win games with not a whole lot of talent around a wide receiver outside Devontae. And, yeah, that's why I got Aaron number 3.
I got a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
And I got a question. So a lot of people, the narrative by the national media has always been Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers make the players around them better, right?
Sure.
So for Aaron Rodgers, Packers fans always made the excuse for like the last 4 seasons that Aaron Rodgers needed defense. Aaron Rodgers needed a run game. Aaron Rodgers needed this. Aaron Rodgers did that. So you bring in Matt LaFleur. He gives you a run game. You have a top 10 defense. So if Aaron Rodgers makes the people around him better, why are Packers fans still saying that he needs another wide receiver?
Well, because you look at the game versus San Fran, they don't match up. You need good players. Look how many weapons Mahomes has. Look at how many weapons Mahomes has.
But he's supposed to make. But the thing with Aaron Rodgers is that
why he's no longer the best anymore. Why he's no longer the best anymore.
So he does. So basically, Aaron Rodgers has regressed, and he doesn't make the players around him better anymore.
He does, but not to the level that he used to. Like, he still makes everyone around him better, because when we saw when Devontae Adams went down, he went 4-0 and actually had a perfect pass rating versus the Raiders. So he doesn't elevate at the level that he used to. He's not as good as he used to be. But by default, and based on what we've seen last year, I think Aaron Rodgers, I still think that he's one of the best in the NFL. And talent-wise, outside of Mahomes, he's up there, man.
And I had a feeling you was probably going to say. I had a feeling you was probably going to say that too. Like, I'm not disagreeing with you or anything like that.
You're just asking a question. You're just asking a question.
Because like everybody always says that, like, oh, this guy makes everybody so better, but then it's, oh, he needs this, he needs this, he needs that. I'm like, bro, like, and like my last thing is, like, a lot of people get mad because, you know, Green Bay didn't draft no wide receivers. I'm like, bro, Green Bay didn't need to draft no more wide receivers, man. Like, it's not about Aaron Rodgers anymore. It's about, you guys gotta understand this. Aaron Rodgers don't run Green Bay no more. That's why you brought in Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur is, you know, if you want to win games, you need to let the coach be the coach and let the players be the players. Like, you know, it's okay with letting the player have a say in personnel decisions and things like that. But Matt LaFleur has to construct the team the way he needs to construct the team to win games. Because at the end of the day, a team only goes as far as their head coach. Like, you can't win a Super Bowl. Like, it's the reason why you can win the Super Bowl with the average quarterback, but it's the reason why you can't win a Super Bowl with a bad head coach and a great quarterback. Like, you need to have a good head coach. So, I mean, I like the fact that they drafted A.J. Dillon. Like, I like what Green Bay has did. Like, I think Aaron Rodgers, you know, like you said, he may not elevate players like how he used to, but he still makes players around him better. But at the end of the day, you know, the team that he has around him now is going to help him out a lot. And, like, one of those wide receivers are going to break out, like Equinemius St. Brown.
We hope they will. We hope they will.
Somebody is, but yeah, I just wanted to ask that question because a lot of people in the media always say that, and I just want to understand that because last year everybody was saying, "Oh, they made players around them better," but last year was Tom Brady doesn't have enough help, Aaron Rodgers needs more, and that's understandable because Tom Brady, his wide receiver. Did you see Philip Dorsett?
Philip Dorsett has not worked out with Andrew Luck. He hasn't worked out with Tom Brady. If he can't make it work with Russell Wilson, man.
Bro, I can never understand how Philip Dorsett lasted so long in New England. Because the real wide receiver in New England, you have to be smart. But Philip Dorsett, I'm not trying to call him dumb or anything, but the dude looked like he never knew what he was doing out there.
Yeah. Make a good point right there. Okay, so me and JT are going to transition to who are the Super Bowl contenders for 2020. Now, I have a couple teams. I believe I have 8 teams as Super Bowl contenders this year. JT will give his list very briefly after I get done. But before I get into the 8 teams I think can win a Super Bowl this year, these are the Super Bowl contenders, I have one team that just missed. And this team is dependent on their quarterback. And that team is Buffalo. Buffalo has everything you need. Stephon Diggs gets added to that wide receiver core. You got John Brown. You got Cole Beasley. You got Dawson Knox. You got a solid running game. You got a solid offensive line. A head coach that does not get enough credit is Sean McDermott. Stout defense, one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. This is all on Josh Allen. And now Josh Allen played good in the first half versus the Texans in the playoffs, but we saw in the second half, he wasn't all that great. And Josh Allen, up to this point, has proven to kind of be a little bit inaccurate. So I just want to see how Josh Allen plays this year before I can say, is Buffalo a Super Bowl contender? Because as of right now, if Josh Allen plays like he played last year, which is good football, but sometimes he makes mistakes. Sometimes he doesn't complete as many passes as he should. So that's my just miss team. That's my just miss team.
I agree. I agree. That's the same thing I said to Buffalo Bills fans about Josh Allen. Like, I told everybody, like, the national media hates on Josh Allen because, Buffalo is a small market team, so of course, they're not going to get a lot of recognition. But I was really high on Buffalo last year. And I told Buffalo Bills fans, like, I don't hate Josh Allen. The thing with Josh Allen is, like, his decision making in big moments is really quick. Like, did you see what he tried to do again? He tried to do a lateral verse against Houston.
It was bad.
Like, that last drive for him, like, it's so many mistakes that he got bailed out on just by that last drive alone. And that's kind of what me and you were saying. Like, in big moments, I know he had a lot of comebacks and things like that, but in big moments, man, like, he makes a lot of questionable decisions. Like, against Houston, like, the game should have been over. Like, he should have been thrown the game away, like, 3 times that drive.
Yeah, we're not going to poo-poo Josh Allen too much more. Let's just get right into our actual contenders, the big boys. So, Buffalo, you just missed, but you can prove me wrong. Kansas City, Super Bowl contender, pretty obvious. Patrick Mahomes, top 10 defense actually from last year. The defense actually played very well in that Super Bowl and gave Patrick Mahomes a chance to win that game, but he was not playing well for 3.5 quarters. You got Andy Reid as your head coach. You got mad weapons on the outside for Patrick Mahomes to throw to. The best offense in the entire NFL. Kansas City makes it in. Baltimore for me. By the way, this is not in order. This is just me listing off teams. Baltimore's up next. Best defense in the NFL, in my opinion. Really, in my opinion. They had one weakness. Inside linebacker. What they do? They draft Patrick Queen. They draft Malik Harrison. They bring in Calais Campbell to help that interior. So the defense, they've really got no holes. And I don't worry about Earl Thomas leaving too, just because they have a very good coaching staff. They have a young safety that was waiting to play. So yeah, I like Baltimore. Devin Duvernay and J.K. Dobbins should be an added weapon, both at running back and wide receiver for Lamar Jackson. You got Lamar, who can play at an MVP level. You got an elite head coach in John Harbaugh, good secondary, very good run game, and solid weapons. They're a Super Bowl contender. Tampa Bay's up next for me. Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, he's no longer elite, but Tom Brady, he's still a very good quarterback. I still think that Tom Brady's a top 10 quarterback. Last year, with a makeshift offensive line, lack of a running game at times, not great weapons, 24 touchdown passes, 4,000 yards, 8 interceptions. They just added Leonard Fournette to their running back core to go with Ronald Jones, to go with the running back that they drafted out of Vanderbilt named Keyshawn Vaughn. Star wide receivers, very good tight ends, a front seven that's very underrated. The secondary is a question, but the secondary played better at the end of the year, and that front seven is nasty. And listen, if you can get out to early leads, that defense doesn't have to be great. So Tampa Bay, I've been preaching all season. They're actually my Super Bowl pick. I said they're going to win the Super Bowl, okay? So that's my team right there. Up next, New Orleans. New Orleans, Drew Brees has fallen off a little bit, but he's still a guy that is accurate, fairly accurate, smart quarterback, I still think Drew Brees is good, but not great. Michael Thomas, elite wide receiver. Emmanuel Sanders, he should help take the pressure off of him. Jared Cook, good tight end. Alvin Kamara, along with Latavius Murray, are a very good running back core. Marshawn Lattimore at cornerback is a star. The defensive line is very good. Got to go to New Orleans. Green Bay. I think Green Bay's still a good team. Aaron Rodgers, I've said that he's still a top 5 quarterback. They got 3 really good running backs. A.J. Dillon, I think that he's going to play well this year, along with Aaron Jones. They got a star wide receiver. They just added Robert Foster today. Alan Lazard and Marcos Valdes-Scantling. They're good enough. I expect one of them to break out this year, potentially. Very good pass rush, very good secondary. And anybody besides Blake Martinez is an upgrade at middle linebacker.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, and then a couple other teams. There's 3 more teams I have. San Francisco. Very good defense, very good run game, creative head coach and Kyle Shanahan. Jimmy Garoppolo. I know people poo-poo Jimmy Garoppolo a lot. I've been critical of Jimmy Garoppolo, but last year was Jimmy Garoppolo's first season as a starter. Let's see what he does in his second season, then try to judge him, okay? George Kittle's a monster, by the way. And another team, the Patriots, So I think the Patriots are kind of a little bit underrated to a certain degree. I know some people are kind of poo-pooing them just because they lost a lot of well, they didn't lose a lot of weapons. They weren't great offensively last year just because of their lack of weapons, but I think Cam might potentially be an upgrade over Brady just simply because Brady can't move anymore. He can't move, and he's not quite the same quarterback that he once was. And Cam Newton, he's motivated. Cam Newton got a very cheap deal. He's only playing for about $1 million per year. And listen, if Cam Newton cannot make it work with the Patriots, that's going to be a bad stain on his legacy. So I think Cam Newton is going to absolutely ball out with this Patriots team. I know that he does not have a whole lot of time this offseason. It's going to be a whole new system. But I expect by about week 8 to week 9, the Patriots will be looking like one of the best teams in the NFL. You know, they got one of the best run games in the NFL, led by Sony Michel. Cam Newton definitely adds to that run game. And Cam Newton elevates the players around him. So listen, Julian Edelman, N'Keal Harry, that's good enough to me. The offensive line is probably one of the best offensive lines he's ever had. That secondary is still intact with Stephon Gilmore leading the charge. And listen, Bill Belichick, even in his worst days as defensive coordinator, sorry for the Patriots, quote unquote, the Patriots will give up yards, but they'll be top 10 in scoring. So I got a top 10 defense, a team that can run the football, a team that will be solid up front, and a quarterback that's very dynamic that can elevate the players around him. And listen, N'Keal Harry, I expect him to play better this year. I think that the 2 tight ends they drafted are very good. So the Patriots, until they prove me otherwise, and until I see Belichick just completely fall off, I think this Patriots team is a Super Bowl contender. Up next, Seattle, and then Philadelphia. Those are the last 2 teams for me. Seattle, Russell Wilson, great quarterback, very good run game, very good head coach. Jamal Adams should help that secondary out a lot, which was already very good. Great linebacker core, good wide receivers in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So Seattle's up next, and then Philadelphia. Like I said, Philadelphia, we are big fans of Carson Wentz. We think Carson Wentz is a very good quarterback. I don't think that he's an elite quarterback like you. Is he an elite quarterback to you?
Absolutely. Like, look what he did last year. He took that team to the playoffs with no wide receivers and a banged up offensive line. Like, elite quarterback to me is somebody who can do more of less, and Carson Wentz proven that. Like, somebody who can't do that, they should no longer be considered elite.
Got it. Carson Wentz is just outside the elite tier for me, but he's still very good. I think Doug Peterson is by far the best head coach in that division. I mean, he won a Super Bowl in his second season with a backup quarterback, and, you know, he's continued to work magic with very injured rosters that may not be as good as Dallas. So, yeah, I think that Philadelphia, solid run game, solid wide receivers when healthy. A lot of people say Carson Wentz didn't have a great weapons. I'm not going to say that he has elite weapons, but when healthy, Deshaun Jackson's very good. When healthy, Alshon Jeffrey's good enough. Zach Ertz is good. Solid offensive line despite some injuries. And people can say, well, Philadelphia is going to get injured as a team a lot. Yes, that's probably going to be the case, but they were the most injured team last year, and they still made the playoffs and won the division. So Philadelphia, Baltimore, Kansas City, Seattle, Saints, Bucks, San Fran, and Green Bay are my Super Bowl contenders. And Buffalo just missed. Who's your Super Bowl contenders?
So I don't have as many as you. Like, I've already pretty much dumbed down my list. I think I probably only got like 4 or 5. Okay. Number 1 is Tampa. I don't really want to make a Super Bowl pick, but they probably would be tied for my favorite, really, with the other team. I think when you look at Tampa Bay, like, their defense was top 10 last year, and I tried to tell everybody this, but people are just so naive. They just look at stats. Like, Jameis Winston really held back that defense because, you know, how discouraging is it to, you know, go 3 and out, go on the sideline, you know, as soon as you know you go over to get a drink of water, to go over or pour that Gatorade in your cup, you don't even get a chance to drink it all the way because you got to go back on the field because Jameis Winston just threw another interception. And Jameis Winston put that defense in a lot of bad spots. So I think with Tom Brady there, not having to go back on the field for as many possessions, as many snaps is going to help with that defense. Like you said, I like that front seven a lot. I like Shaq Barrett. JPP was the monster last year. Imagine if he would have played the whole entire season, he probably would have had about 15, 16 sacks. I like the secondary a lot. Antoine Winfield was the best safety in my opinion. Dude is a ball hawk. He can do everything well. You also got Jamal Dean, Carlton Davis. Like, a lot of people are really sleeping on those 2 guys. But if you go back and you watch the tape for those guys, like, I think one of them, like, one had 17 pass deflections, one had 19 pass deflections. The thing with them is they just can't bring down those interceptions. So Tampa Bay's defense, in my opinion, is going to be top 10. And then, of course, we don't really need to talk about the offense. We know that's the best offense in the NFL from a talent standpoint. How good the offensive line be, that remains to be seen. Hopefully, they'll be a tad bit better. So I got Tampa Bay there. The 49ers probably would be my Super Bowl pick to make it back, simply for the fact that they didn't really they didn't really lose that much. Well, they did lose some, but they replaced it. They got younger. You trade away DeForest Buckner and you get Javon Kinlaw. So you get cheaper and you get younger there. You lose Emmanuel Sanders, but you bring in Brandon Ayuk. You're still going to have the rookie. I can't think of his name right now. Deebo Samuel. Whenever he comes back, and a big weapon that nobody's talking about is the addition of Jordan Reed. Jordan Reed may not be able to stay healthy, but now that he is going to be paired up with George Kittle and he's not going to be taking all those hits because he won't be the primary tight end, when they run 2 tight end sets, that's going to be really scary. Now, I know they lost Matt Breida and things like that, but they already have like grandma's daycare of halfbacks anyway, so I don't really think that's a big of a loss. You got Raheem Mostert.
Plus Trent Williams on the offensive line. He's a good addition that no one talks about.
Yep. So, I mean, the 49ers, in my opinion, like, did they get better? I don't really think they got better, but I don't think they got worse because, like, all the guys they lost, they replaced with pretty solid replacements. So, I got the 49ers. They probably would be my pick. Then, I also like their coaching staff as well. I like Robert Saleh. Like, I like the 49ers coaching staff because they pay attention to, like, details. Like, same thing with Bill Belichick. Like, everything matters. Penalties, the timing on the block, getting it right there at the right moment. So I really like the 49ers. I like their coaching staff. At number 3, this is probably another NFC team. I got to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. Like you said, Philadelphia, with Carson Wentz, as long as Carson Wentz can stay healthy, that's a Super Bowl contender team. And unlike last year, when they got injuries, they didn't really have a lot of depth. Now they got all kinds of depth. Like now, if one guy goes down, you got John Hightower, you got Marquise Goodwin. Like they got a lot of weapons. The offensive line has a lot of depth too. The defense is probably the biggest improvement. Bringing in Darius Slay, which I know Darius Slay kind of wasn't all that good with Detroit. I mean, he's probably the best cornerback that the Philadelphia Eagles have had on their roster since Asante Samuel or Nnamdi Asomugha, even when Nnamdi Asomugha kind of fell off a little bit. So that's pretty much it. I don't have Seattle on my list because I feel like Seattle, like, they have good skills. But in my opinion, if you want to be a Super Bowl contender, you got to be good in the trenches. And Seattle is both terrible on both sides of the trenches. They don't have a dominant one-on-one pass rusher. They were one of the worst teams in the NFL last year, getting pressure on the quarterback. If you want to make a run at the Super Bowl, you got to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. Seattle couldn't do that. So their defensive line isn't great, and their offensive line is still not great neither. So they got a lot of skill position, but they're pretty weak in the trenches, which matters a lot to me. Now, for the AFC, I only have 2 teams. I have Kansas City and I have the Baltimore Ravens. So I have the 49ers, Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Kansas City. I agree with what you said about the Patriots. I just don't really know, like, how far they're making. Like, I don't think they're as talented as a team like Kansas City and Baltimore because, like, although coaching in the playoffs matters, like, the deeper you get into the playoffs, not only are you going to face good coaches, but you're going to face good teams as well. So, like, I think they face a team like Kansas City or Baltimore, they may not have enough. They may not have the personnel to, stop one of those teams, especially if they face Baltimore again. They're going to get manhandled on the defense side of the football because the thing, like, a lot of people gotta understand this. It doesn't matter how you try to game plan for Baltimore. Like, at the end of the day, the only way you're going to stop Baltimore is if you have the personnel to stop that offense. And not everybody has that.
Quick question. Do you trust Belichick to do in the playoffs versus them? Because we saw Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee was a better team than Baltimore last year, but they still found a way to beat Baltimore. And Lamar, we've seen him in the playoffs. Yeah, it's kind of shaky.
It all depends on the coaching because you got to think, Vrabel, he had that team, like, he was prepared. They had the team equipped to stop that with all the speed they had on the outside, Adoree Jackson, So, I mean, the thing with the Patriots is that one thing that the Patriots defense struggles with is speed. Because when you play, like, man-to-man coverage and you got guys like Bumper and Gilmore, one thing that really can hold them is when you have speed. That's why we saw Marquise Brown last season. That's why we saw Baltimore torch that Patriots team because that Ravens offense was just so fast and so explosive, and the Patriots don't really have the speed. But Tennessee, they had a lot of speed, and they didn't have a guy named Simmons, Jeffrey Simmons, I think his name was, for Tennessee. That dude was an absolute freak show. This dude barely played last season, goes to the playoffs, and absolutely that dude is a monster, man. So Baltimore and Kansas City, like, you kind of, like, it doesn't matter how great of a game plan you have. You still got to have, the pieces set in place to stop that. And I just don't think the Patriots have enough speed this season to stop those guys.
Got it. There definitely is a ceiling with the Patriots, in my opinion. I think that Baltimore and Kansas City in that conference are definitely the cream of the crop. But Patriots, man, they can get a couple breaks. I think that they're going to be right there, man. All right, so once again, I'm joined by JT Sports right here. And JT is a Steelers fan, like I said earlier in this episode. And we're going to break down a week 1 matchup that I'm actually very excited to watch. The Giants and the Steelers, week number 1 of Monday Night Football. The Giants are one of the teams I'm really interested to see because I don't know what Joe Judge is going to bring to the table. I've recently made a video saying that he's going to fail as a New York Football Giants head coach, and Giants fans got mad at me. But, we'll see, man. I'm going to give Joe Judge a fair chance this year. I'm going to really be fair, realize that he has a roster that's rebuilding and whatnot. But we'll just dive into this matchup, JT, what are your initial thoughts about this game? How are you feeling as a Steelers fan about facing the Giants week 1? Just give me some of your initial thoughts.
To me, I have a lot of skepticism because, one, Pittsburgh always loses games like this. Teams that we should beat, we lose to. So, I have a lot of skepticism about this. So, Pittsburgh, with their past, I think they still could go ahead and get this victory because, the Giants secondary is just so bad. They lost DeAndre Baker, who was pretty much their second best cornerback.
They did add Logan Ryan, though. They did add Logan Ryan. They had Logan Ryan recently, but it's still a question. It's still a question, though.
I still don't know. The secondary still isn't all that great to me. I know Logan Ryan, he's all right, but he's old, man. So I like Logan Ryan. I like James Bradbury, but I really don't like that secondary. I don't like that defense at all. I think their defense is really going to be a liability when it comes to pass coverage, especially they got Blake Martinez back there. He's just going to allow he's going to allow everything across the middle basically. So it's like playing Madden when you just throw over the top of the linebackers and they don't react. That's what Blake Martinez basically is. But this team is going to be really good against the run game. So I think Pittsburgh, if there was a game to watch to see where Big Ben is at, this will most likely be the game because I think the Giants' defensive line is really good when it comes to stopping the run. I actually think the Giants could have a top 15, maybe top 10 run defense in the NFL. But against the pass, I think Big Ben probably could have a big field day. And if there was a team that Big Ben should want to go against the kind of, at his first game back, it would be the New York Giants because I don't think their secondary is going to match up all that well against Pittsburgh's speed. I don't really think Logan Ryan and James Bradbury are going to be able to, handle all the speed and youth that the Steelers bring to this wide receiver position. And on top of that, this defense, man, that offensive line for New York is still really shaky. And the Steelers do have Cam Hayward. They do have Stephon Tuitt, who is coming back from an injury. He was on the verge of having one of his best seasons of his career. You got TJ Watt there. You got a really good secondary. You got Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton. So, I think the Giants really do have a chance to win this game. I'm not going to come out here and say that, the Steelers are going to annihilate the New York Giants. And I really like the Giants. I like Joe Judge. This guy was a special teams coordinator. Special teams coordinators normally work out really well as head coaches because, they're guys who know how to manage personalities. They instead of, taking over as the offensive or defensive, play calling, things like that, they're more like managers. They're
the CEO of everything. And Harbaugh was a defensive coach, not defensive coach. He was a special teams coach. So was Mike Tomlin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So special teams coaches actually make pretty good coaches. So I think New York has a really good chance. On top of that, this is week 1 as well. Now, the reason why I'm going to take Pittsburgh to win this game is because New York is learning a new system. So pretty much when you're learning a new system, how much of the playbook do you know? Pittsburgh's not learning a new system. All it really is about timing and chemistry. And if Pittsburgh and Big Ben can get back on the same page fairly quickly, then I think Pittsburgh should be able to win this game. But I think this game should be pretty close in my opinion. I think it could be pretty high scoring. I'm going to take Pittsburgh to win 27-21 is my final score prediction. I'm not going to say the Steelers are going to blow out New York because this isn't college football. Even though Pittsburgh has the way better team, in the NFL, you don't really see a lot of blowouts like that. So I think the game will be fairly close.
Yeah. And I was going to kind of dive into a couple other things, but you pretty much, took a lot of the words out of my mouth. I'm just going to kind of elaborate on this and we'll just kind of wrap this thing up right here. So the reason why I favor the Steelers is just because even if Joe Judge proves me wrong, which he very well could, because I just have never seen Joe Judge coach a game before. And he's going to a division where he's facing, in his own division, 3 coaches that have been to Super Bowls. Ron Rivera, Mike McCarthy, and Doug Peterson. All 3 have been to Super Bowls. So I'm very skeptical about Joe Judge, and he was supposed to take the Mississippi State head coaching job right before he was supposed to take the New York Giants head coaching job. And Mississippi State, they're not even a top 5 SEC school. So I got my questions about Joe Judge, but even if Joe Judge proves to be a very good head coach one day, this is his first ever game. And he's going against Mike Tomlin. And now Mike Tomlin teams do sometimes play down the competition, but I think that Mike Tomlin is getting his team motivated for week number 1. And I think Pittsburgh's a more talented team. Now, recently, like we talked about earlier, I don't think the Steelers are a playoff team, but they're still better than the Giants. I think the Giants are going to win about 4 to 5 games. Pittsburgh's good for anywhere from 8 to 10 wins, probably. So, yeah, I think Pittsburgh's just a better team. And I think that this will be a situation where down the stretch, New York is going to get outcoached. And they have the Pittsburgh Steelers just have better players than the Giants in the first place. And I have questions about the Steelers' offense, but versus this Giants defense, they'll be able to move the football. And I don't think the pass rush is going to get to Ben Roethlisberger. And if Big Ben gets time in the pocket to throw and scan the entire field, and there's not going to be a whole lot of pressure in his face, then he can get the ball to Juju. Then he can get the ball to Deontay Johnson, his deep threat. Then he can distribute the ball to Eric Ebron. I also think the Pittsburgh Steelers will be able to run the football a little bit on the Giants' defense. And Daniel Jones in this offense, along with Saquon Barkley, they can score some points in my opinion. I think they're underrated from a sense that if Daniel Jones gets protection and if he improves upon his fumbling issues, this team can put up some points if Evan Ingram stays healthy, if Darius Slayton gets better as a player, if Golden Tate stays healthy. But see, the thing is, this Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line is very good. And Andrew Thomas, I liked him a lot coming out of college, but he's a rookie. And you're going against Pittsburgh's defensive line, may not be the best day for you. May not be the best day for you.
Isn't he a left tackle?
Yes, he's a left tackle.
Yeah, he's gonna be matched up against Cam Hayward. And Cam Hayward is an all-pro, so he's gonna have a really hard debut. We're really gonna see how good he really is. But the thing that, my thing with Joe Judge is I don't think Giants fans should be mad at you for, having a little bit of skepticism because, I think it's fair to have some skepticism when you have a new coaching staff. Even as the Green Bay fan, I think you may be a little bit, you were probably a little bit of skepticism or
I had us winning 10 games with Matt LaFleur. I did not expect Matt LaFleur to be this good. I have my questions.
I knew he was going to get y'all to the playoffs, but, my thing is, I really like the addition of Jason Garrett as their offensive coordinator. And Jason Garrett as their offensive, a lot of people look and make that same face too. They're like, Jason Garrett, this dude sucked as a head coach for Dallas. But here's the thing. Jason Garrett, when he was the offensive coordinator for Dallas back in 07, 08, he was literally the best offensive coordinator in the NFL. He was assistant coach of the year. I forgot what year it was. I think it was 07 or 08. And one thing about Jason Garrett is that despite the fact he was never a really great head coach for Dallas, he gets the most out of his quarterbacks. He got the most out of Tony Romo. He got the most out of Kellen Moore when Kellen Moore had to step in for a few games when Tony Romo was out and they had the shaky quarterback situation. Kellen Moore is pretty solid in those games. Now, I know the interception numbers may not look like that, but he was pretty okay. So one thing about Jason
Based on his expectations, he was solid.
Yeah, I think that Jason Garrett is a really good offensive mind. So I want to see what Jason Garrett does with this New York Giants offense because he's pretty good. He's pretty good when it comes to, developing a young quarterback. So I'll give Jason Garrett that. But, that was 10 years ago the last time we saw Jason Garrett as an offensive coordinator. So that could change. But overall, he's been pretty good when it comes to development. Even Dak Prescott, what wasn't he drafted in the 4th round or something like that?
Yep.
Yeah, you don't magically get drafted in the 4th round and just come out that good. You get drafted in the mid-round, you go to a good team with a solid coach that's able to get you to that point. Because, Dak Prescott just wasn't that good. Jason Garrett developed him and got him to that point. So, I think Jason Garrett, I want to see what he does in this game. I want to see the offensive play calling that he's going to have. Now, it's been nearly a decade, so that's going to be really interesting. The Steelers is a really tough game to try to get back into, the flow of things when it comes to calling plays. So, I'm really excited about the New York Giants. I like Joe Judge. Special teams coordinators make really good head coaches.
Yeah, I actually was not a fan of the Jason Garrett hire. I recognize that having a guy that's been a head coach before, having that on your staff, along with Freddie Kitchens, actually, who wasn't a great head coach, but he at least has that experience, and he'll allow Joe Judge to well, let me say this. Joe Judge can at least, go to Freddie Kitchens and go to Jason Garrett and say, hey, what does this work? Does that work? What did you see here? Those guys have been there and done that. So I think that Joe Judge has done a good job of building up his coaching staff. I'm not sold on Jason Garrett. I'm really not. I think that most of the time in which those quarterbacks were looking good was because of the players around them. Tony Romo had good wide receivers. Even guys like Miles Austin for Tony Romo were actually pretty good. You know, Dez Bryant was pretty good. Jason Witten was pretty good. Dak Prescott's had good weapons around him. So I don't want to talk about Jason Garrett too much more. I'm just going to say I'm waiting to see with this entire coaching staff. But getting back to the actual game, I have Pittsburgh winning 27-13. I do think the game's actually going to be close heading into the fourth quarter. But I don't know. I just think that Daniel Jones, until he fixes his fumbling issues, I'm going to assume he's going to fumble a lot. I'm going to assume that his pocket presence is not quite there. And it probably won't be better this year, but until I see drastic improvement, I'm just going to assume that he has that trait still. And versus that Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line, that could cause some problems. And I do think that the Giants defense is not going to be able to bother Big Ben Roethlisberger. And I do think that heading into the fourth quarter, the game will be close. But I think that Mike Tomlin's coaching, Pittsburgh just having better players, and their defense will prevail late. And the game probably will be close, but the score won't indicate that. So, yeah, I'd probably say 27-13 Pittsburgh. I don't think the Giants can really score too much on Pittsburgh's defense. That's just my opinion, though. But, yeah, you had 20.
Your prediction is more lopsided than mine, and I'm a Steelers fan, and I'm saying that I'm thinking that this game is going to be fairly close. Like that's why I try to tell people, like I'm not biased or anything like that. Like everything I say, everything you say is like it's not biased. Like it's fair criticism. So I mean, the fact that you chose Pittsburgh to win by that big of a margin is a little bit of a surprise to me because like the thing with Daniel Jones is that Daniel Jones, and there's been a lot of film breakdowns, like Daniel Jones is tough. Like, this dude does not care how many guys come in his face. Like, he was staying in the pocket. But here's the thing with Daniel Jones. Like,
he doesn't see the pressure, though. That's the problem. He won't see it. He won't see it. So if he doesn't see it, like, he's not getting out the way.
And against Pittsburgh, like, if he hasn't improved in the offseason on that, he's going to be in for – he's going to get hit a lot, especially when you got T.J. Watt. Because when T.J. Watt and Chandler Jones are two of the best pass rushers in the NFL when it comes to just – stripping the football out of the quarterback. It's like those two guys, Chandler Jones and TJ Watt, they're not looking to sack the quarterback. Like, they want to knock the ball. Like, they want to strip sack you. Like, they want to knock the ball out. And if they can't knock the ball out, then, of course, they're going to lay you down on the ground. So, I mean, Daniel Jones, man, I'm really interested to see that because you got a defensive line that's pretty stacked at every single position. My only question for Pittsburgh is I want to see what Chris Wormley does. And the reason why I want to see what Chris Wormley does, he's projected to be our starter. He's supposed to replace Javon Hargrave. I don't think you know who Javon Hargrave is, but Javon Hargrave
he was a defensive lineman. He's on the Eagles right now, right?
Yes, I'm so upset we lost Javon Hargrave, man. I loved him so much. Like, this dude had an incredible motor. He started out just being good against the run, but he has kind of developed his game all around. So you got Chris Wormley, who they made a trade with the Baltimore Ravens. And, like, if the Ravens are willing to trade this guy away, I don't really know how good this guy really is, man. And, like, if your divisional rival is able to trade you somebody, for, like, basically some picks, like, that kind of has my skepticism. But I think if Pittsburgh wins this game still, like, 27-20, like, I don't think this game may be a block because, it'll be week one. I think the Steelers may get rusty too. But I think in the fourth quarter, Pittsburgh should take over. And if the game is close with Big Ben being so good in crunch time like he is, I think that the Steelers should be able to pull this game out. But I think this game may be a little bit closer. And, like, you don't really see a lot of blowouts week one unless you're just terribly bad like how the Miami Dolphins were. But normally week one, the games are pretty close because everybody is still trying to get back into football shape.
Yeah. So you have the Steelers winning 27-21. I got Pittsburgh winning 27-13.
Oh, and another thing is, I think that Eric Ebron is going to terrorize Blake Martinez. If Blake Martinez has to play Eric Ebron man-to-man coverage, I think it's going to be close. Like, and I didn't even get to say this when I was talking about the Steelers earlier. Eric Ebron, you say he never had 1,000 yards. He was a former All-Pro. He had 14 touchdowns in 2018.
I'm still not impressed.
I believe
I'm not impressed. I'm just not impressed. I'm just not.
I don't know. Well, he'll be impressed in what he's exposed to Blake Martinez because, Blake Martinez.
That's definitely a matchup that Pittsburgh can exploit. But, yeah, you got Steelers winning by 6 points. I have the Steelers winning by, math correct, 14 points. So 27-13 for me. Pittsburgh, you got Pittsburgh 27-21. Well, that's pretty much all I have, JT. Anything else you want to plug in before you leave the Juice Alert?
Man, I just want to thank you for having me on your podcast, man. I remember you commented on one of my videos a couple months ago. I was like, bro, what is the juice alert? Then I finally clicked on your channel. I was like, oh, this man has a real channel. Like a lot of I don't even click on channels. Like I was like, bro, who is the juice alert? And I just randomly clicked on it. I was like, oh, this man has a legitimate channel. Then I checked out some of your videos. I'm like, okay, I like it. I like he has some pretty fair taste, even though he keeps shredding my Steelers. But I know at this point, like I'm pretty used to it because like who hasn't bashed the Pittsburgh Steelers? At least you're not calling Kyle like. My thing with you is like you have valid points, and and I actually had to like write notes because normally like I don't have to write notes when I come in to debate people. Like, I just know everything in my head. So like, props to you, man. Like your criticism for Pittsburgh is fair. Like at least you're not calling Coward out here talking about some Steelers off the line, washed up. Mike, I'm like, bro, like having an older off the line doesn't mean that you're going to be bad. Like sometimes having an older off the line means, you may be old, but you have a lot of chemistry. You have a lot of time. And the offensive line is more about chemistry. It's more about time. You got to know when to make that block. You got to know when he's going to, pull. When that. So, Pittsburgh has basically had the same off the line besides like two new additions over the last few seasons for like over the last 4 years. So, I mean, Pittsburgh's off the line. Yeah, everybody on this off the line is like 30 besides one person, but the chemistry there, the awareness and IQ is there. So you get reasonable points for Pittsburgh. That's why I want to come on here and just be like, oh, you're an idiot like everybody else in the comment section.
Yeah, I like Colin Coward a lot. I think that he does good with his job. But yeah, I mean, sometimes his takes, they're a little bit outlandish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I still like him though, but. I was going to say something, but I totally forgot. But, it doesn't matter because we are out of topics to talk about right here. This is pretty much the whole show. JT, once again, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.